Welcome to Small Ship Cruise Talk, a show where we share insider tips and first-hand experiences about this outstanding, yet lesser-known form of travel. We are passionate about sharing our knowledge about river cruises, expedition, yacht, and barge cruises, so you are informed when it comes to choosing your own vacation experiences. We're your co-hosts, Dan and Mikkel, and we are your cruise experts and the co-founders of Sometimes Sailing, a website that focuses on small ship cruising. Welcome to the first episode of Small Ship Cruise Talk.
Woohoo! I'm so excited. This is awesome. I have been looking forward to this for a really long time. Dan and I have talked about this for years, and everything happens when the stars align for a reason. I am Mikkel.
And I'm Dan.
And we are your co-hosts not only of Small Ship Cruise Talk, but also of the Small Ship Cruise website that we co-founded and co-create content for called sometimessailing.com. We created this podcast out of a passion for small ship cruising and aim to help you understand this incredible travel option and this awesome way to see the world. And we hope to spread the options of small ship cruising and open your eyes to not just river cruising or yacht cruising, but barge cruising and expedition cruising and even some special experiences on bigger ships. We are kicking it off with today's podcast, episode 1, Small Ship Cruise Size Matters, and talking about why size impacts your cruise experience.
Coming up in episode 2 and 3. So episode 2, we're going to specifically focus on the 3 different flavors of small ships. So we've got river, yacht, barge cruising. Also talk about those price points for those particular sizes and the crew to guest ratio on each. And then in episode 3, we're going to talk about ocean versus river cruising. Completely different animals, and there's not a lot of similarities. Maybe they're both cruises, that's about it. But for the most part, they're completely different. As we go through this, and as you're listening to the podcast, make sure you hit that subscribe button wherever you are so you don't miss an episode. Because this is just the tip of the iceberg, really. We're going to be coming out with a bunch more episodes and really diving deep into small ship cruising.
I love a pun. Give me all the nautical puns, diving deep. I love it. Well, with that, anchors away, if I dare say. I hope there are some corny joke appreciators out there listening, but I'm going to go with there are. And you're in good company because I love them too. So let's talk about what qualifies as a quote-unquote small ship and establish what that means. It's open to interpretation in terms of the thousands of people. There's no doubt that anything 300 people or below is quantified as a small ship, right?
Yeah.
But we're going to define it as 1,000 people or less. So there aren't as many 1,000 passenger ships that are kind of the threshold for ocean vessels in terms of the mega ships that people think of, like Royal Caribbean's Icon of the Seas that has way more than 6,000 passengers at capacity, or Norwegian Cruise Line's Encore with close to 4,000 guests, which is similar to Disney's ships Treasure and Wish. But 1,000 becomes kind of small compared to that. And the ship size generally corresponds to guest count, which equates to a physical size difference. So a physically smaller vessel. And as an example, we've been on celestial cruises, which is between, 800 to 1,000 passengers. And then you make a jump when you go on something like Windstar, Star Pride that we've been on, that is a sizable vessel with plenty to do and multi-decked, but it is around the 300 passenger mark, and then even smaller down the small ship cruise funnel into something like 196 guests at capacity on the Ama Magna with Ama Waterways river cruising we were just on. And the smallest Dan and I have ever sailed on was on a barge cruise ship called Andretti on the Canal de Midi in France. We were 2 of 5 passengers, and we will get into that in the future, but for now, that's an overview. And the size ranges as well.
Size ranges for different small ship categories. Let's talk about river cruise ships. So they're typically 125 or between 125 and 200 passengers on average. Moving up a little bit, we're going to go to small ocean ships. They're between 100 and 1,000 passengers. Then there's expedition size vessels. That's between 50 and 250 passengers. Barge cruises, as Mikkel talked about, is between 4 and 12 passengers. You will see some larger ships out there with that. And then yacht cruises can be 2 passengers to 100 passengers.
That's true. And if we're Jeff Bezos on his yacht, that would be amazing. I think for this purpose, we'll focus on the yacht cruises that the typical guest can book in the future. But we did want people to be aware that obviously there's something like a yacht cruise for 2 people. I recall, what is that Goldie Hawn movie with Kurt Russell? Overboard! That was an amazing movie. Overboard, they're just a family of 2 cruising before her ill-fated fall overboard, which we won't get into here. But that's to say, yacht cruises, 2 to 100 passengers, but we will focus on the ones that are more so 100 passengers that you can book, kind of like you're booking a river cruise, and you just sign up and go, and you do not have to charter the whole ship or own your own ship. So why does ship size matter? Not to get too punny again, but ship size does matter, and we're going to say smaller is better in this instance because you get things like better port access and personalization. There's a better crew to passenger ratio and service differences when you are one of 100 passengers versus one of 6,000 passengers. Additionally, the onboard atmosphere is intimate on a small ship versus bustling on a big ship, and the activities are a little different as well. And here's where small ships are maybe not for somebody who needs a ton of onboard experiences. So you have less experiences on small ships versus the huge variety on a big ship. But small ships are great because a lot of the time you're not on the ship when it's in port because you are in the heart of a city. So you're easily able to make the destination your entertainment, whether it's with an organized tour through the cruise line or on your own. And one of my favorite topics, of course, is eating and dining on any ship.
I think that's most people's favorite part of a cruise.
Thanks for making me feel less alone on that.
Right. So the thing you're going to get with a smaller ship is you're going to get more quality versus quantity. The attention to detail is going to be much more precise on a smaller ship. And then stability. For me, that's a big thing because I get motion sick on the big ships, but on the small ships, I don't. Not as much, let's put it that way. So stability is how rough the water is going to be and how much you're going to feel it on the ship. Especially on river, you're probably not going to feel much movement at all, but you'll definitely feel it on some larger bodies of water or open water. And another big thing about the smaller ships is that social experience. You really kind of build a community over those couple of days that you're cruising, and you're seeing the same people over and over, and you're having dinner and lunch and breakfast and everything with the same group of people. So you quickly build that community on the board.
That's really nice, especially because we've made some good lasting friendships. And in a nice way, even if you're a little antisocial like we are sometimes, you're forced to make those connections and talk to people on small ships, which has been good for us, right? Like we've visited friends in Florida and Seattle that we've formed friendships and relationships with from small ship experiences.
Yeah. The other thing, that small ship advantage that we find is it's more destination focused. You really start to feel like you're not only a community on board, but you're part of the communities that you visit. So like the example comes to mind is just how immersive our uncruise cruise was in Hawaii and how it felt like we were part of the communities that we were visiting. And that the crew on board also really helps with that. I find on smaller ships, we get to know them kind of quickly, and they definitely know us by name, but we get to know them by name and their background.
As an example of getting to know them, it's not just like a captain walks around the ship and says hi and pauses for photo opportunities. I recall on Uncruise when we were in the Humpback Whale Harbor, the protected sanctuary in Hawaii, and Dan Dan took the wheel. Dan, we were in the bridge. They have an open bridge policy, of course, when it's safe and they're not docking or anything, and guests can be in there. But to your point about the intimacy and getting to know the crew, not just other passengers, these small ship experiences are as such that you can meet the captain and have multiple conversations with her, which was the case with Captain Tiffany on Safari Explorer, a small ship with 36 passengers. I love that about small ship cruising. And we had the same nice relationship with Captain Laurent in France on Angedy barge cruise, for example. So I love that you highlighted that.
I mean, ultimately, at the end of it, they're just less crowded, and you're going to have more access to the crew, to the captain, things like that. But you also start to get that community feel.
Community. Yeah, for sure. Also, we know what you're thinking. Maybe, all right, fine, but what does this cost us? The truth is, there is a higher price point to these experiences, but it's not really comparing apples to apples. Let's take the Antarctica example. A lot of big ships that go to Antarctica, you're not allowed to get off the ship.
Right.
So you can see it, but you can't get off. What do you think about that, Dan?
Part of cruising is being able to visit the ports. For me, at least. I mean, I know
like
there's
making
some
landfall.
Yeah, I know some people, it's really just being on the water and experiencing that. But for me, it's that interaction with the places that we're visiting and the ship and how the two meet.
Yeah, and in terms of, like you said, interacting with the land, and that means the landscape and hearing nature and seeing bears catch salmon in Alaska, or for a lot of people, penguins in Antarctica. Let's get back to the price points. Whereas the price point is a lot higher on these small ships, you also have a lot more included. The Antarctica example is extreme. It could cost $10,000 to go to Antarctica, and the experience is completely different than if you went on a bigger ship for half the price. But let's say you're going on a river cruise ship that for a week is about $5,000 per person. Well, you get so much more with that price tag than you do on a big ocean ship. So small ships are great value for the money, if you ask us. Of course, we're biased because we love them, but we're here to spread the gospel about small ship cruising because we're so passionate about it. So that's to say that things are included like all your excursions on most river cruise lines, for example, all your excursions on expedition ships or yacht cruise ships that we've been on, or barge cruises. So you're not gonna be nickeled and dimed. You're not gonna feel like you paid a lot of money and then you owe more money for something. Alcohol is included if you like a cocktail or a glass of wine with lunch and dinner. And, I'm thinking about what you said with the crew to passenger ratio, and it's less crowded, and all of this, I hope, is painting a bigger picture of why small ship cruising is an incredible option. Along with the price point, you have maybe fewer dining options because the ship is physically smaller, as well as fewer entertainment options. But a lot of the ships bring entertainment on board a couple of nights of your expedition or your journey or your sailing. And some ships even have more than one dining venue, so you get a little bit of a change of scenery. So things to look out for when you are considering a small ship, if those things are important to you, are an increase in those options. And then another thing is stability in rough seas. Dan talked about how he gets a little bit of motion sickness. A good example is an expedition ship on the ocean if there's rough seas. So we do want to point out that if you are considering a small ship cruise, you're going to want to make sure that they have stabilizers. It's all great and smooth sailing if there are stabilizers, but as soon as there are not stabilizers, it becomes abundantly apparent that the ship is missing them. So you do want to make sure that if you're on a ship that's small, including a yacht cruise ship that's going on the ocean, they are equipped with the latest and greatest technology in vessels on the ocean. It's not really a consideration for river cruising because there's really no waves. The only river we've been on with a current is the Gironde in France when we went from Bordeaux, but you barely notice that. What do we always say about river cruising, which we've convinced a bunch of people that are prone to motion sickness that river cruising is the way to go. We always joke about it.
That if you need to, you can walk to shore.
True. And because the river is often not even, more than 6 to 10 feet deep. So that's something to consider as well. And I wanted to touch on a good experience that we are able to compare a big ship to a small ship in Alaska. And a lot of people are familiar with Alaska and the cruising possibilities there who are listening. And it's such a different experience going on a smaller ship. We went on a big ship and it was great. And we completely respect and appreciate that there are so many options in Alaska. But when you go on a big ship, you don't feel as close to the glaciers. That's a big reason why a lot of people go. You feel like you're one of tens of thousands that might make landfall, so to speak, in that port that day. And a great example is Ketchikan. When we were there, one of our favorite things to do was look at the board of the passengers coming, because we were staying overnight after our Alaskan Dream Cruises experience that disembarked in Ketchikan, and we were spending a few days there, staying overnight at a wonderful hotel that was walking distance to the ports. And I remember going every day to look at the board at the guard shack, so to speak, that had the big ships that were coming in. And what did we see? It was like, today's grand total, 7,000 people, right, or 20,000. Yeah. Do you remember?
It varied. There was a couple days it was like 15,000 people. So just the population of Ketchikan increased by 15,000 people.
And it's wild. It's like this small town that generally you rarely even see people walking on the street past 5 p.m. and the restaurants close at 8 or 9,
Right.
Right? So it's like such a difference, and it really depends on your preference, what you're looking for, what your budget is, the kind of experience you want to have, who you're cruising with, and considering their likes and dislikes. But when we went with Alaskan Dream Cruises to Alaska, as opposed to the big ship we went on, and we went on Celebrity Edge, which was also phenomenal, it's just a stark contrast, and small ship cruising really provides a phenomenal bang for your buck, and you pay more but you get more and you feel more special.
You kind of bring up an interesting point in that we were on a small ship, but we went to a port that big ships went to. Maybe there was only 25 of us getting off the ship, but there was still 10,000 other people getting off the ship at the same time. So that happens, but then it also happens where the smaller ships can just go places that the big ships, it's just not possible to go.
Love that point. Yeah, that's so true. We've been in other places and have seen that too, like Iceland.
Well, even last week when we were in Europe, we were in Budapest, and there was at least 3 or 4 river cruise ships there that were unloading. So you're still getting the crowds, but it's slightly less. Maybe it's a third of what one big ship would be.
For brand recognition, because that's so much in this industry or any industry. People know brands like Nike or Lululemon or Dove, Let's throw out some names people would know. I'll start. Windstar. That's a small ship cruise. They're about 300 passengers on their Star Breeze, Star Pride, Star Seeker, etc.
Yeah, I would say everybody knows Viking.
Yes, Viking is great. Alma Waterways, a leader in river cruising for sure, and one we love.
It's going to be interesting because Celebrity is going to come out with river cruising.
Ooh, good one.
Coming up soon. So, but as of right now, let's say, I would say Emerald or maybe Scenic. Both of them maybe lesser known, but still, you see them pretty often on the rivers.
Yeah, and for our listeners out there, it's lesser known, the names perhaps, but we've been on them and love them. And people that go on river cruises and look into more river cruising options do quickly realize they are strong players in the river cruising space. They also do yacht cruising and expedition cruising. And a little inside info, they're an Australian-based company, and Scenic owns Emerald. So Scenic is a little bit of their higher end line, and Emerald is their lower cost option, but I hesitate to say that because they're still a high-end brand. I'm going to go with American Cruise Lines.
Yeah.
And that's in line with lesser known names in small ship cruising, which is funny because they're actually one of the river cruise options with the largest fleet comparable to Viking and AMA waterways. But
Yeah.
I'll let you say why American Cruise Lines is special and unique.
Interestingly overlooked, where
Yeah.
a lot of people just don't think about cruising in the United States. And if they do, they automatically think Mississippi.
True.
And they don't talk about the Columbia or the Snake or the Rio Grande or the Tennessee River. All of those are viable options that nobody talks about. But cruising in the United States is so interesting because it's easy. Like, you just have to get to the port. It's probably not going to be a 6 or 22-hour flight to get to your port. It might be a 45-minute drive, or it might be a 3-hour drive. So the accessibility is there. And that's just that comfort of not leaving the States.
I love that you said that because you just reminded me of another fantastic aspect of small ship cruising in the United States that is unique to small ships, because big ships cannot do this because they have to make a call in a foreign port. So whereas you go on a big ship and you might leave from Seattle to go to Alaska, you would have to stop in Canada, which means you need your passport or your birth certificate depending on the cruise line and the current rules and regulations. And on small ships in the United States, you don't need that. You're probably only going to airports that are domestic travel. Even if you fly from somewhere like Florida or New York or Minnesota or Utah or California to Alaska, it is domestic travel. It's the same with Hawaii. We flew to Hawaii via California from Florida. You only need your driver's license. And we even had a conversation about a driver's license. We felt so weird going across oceans, not bringing our passport, remember?
Yeah, yeah.
But ultimately, we decided the passport was for sure not necessary and left it at home, even though it felt weird not traveling with it. But I love that you brought that up because you don't need your passport for an uncruised adventure in Hawaii, or another name, if we're name riffing, Alaskan Dream Cruises in Alaska. Throw me one more cruise line and we will wrap it up there to keep the small ship cruise names top of mind for our listeners.
Last but not least, I would say, just with our experience and what we've gone on, is European waterways. Nice barge cruise. Definitely not on a lot of people's radar. A hidden gem, but not to be overlooked.
Oh my gosh, I'm so excited about this podcast because you just reminded me Maine Windjammer is also another one. Okay, I have to stop because we could talk about this forever, which is why we have a podcast about this. So ship size is important.
So ship size is important. We've talked about a lot of the pros and cons, but really you're just going to get more of a destination focus. You're going to get that personalized service, less crowds on the ship and at the ports. Those ports are going to be unique. And as you're cruising, you're going to build that community. So you're going to build it with not only the crew, but your fellow passengers, and you're going to have a connection to the communities that you visit.
I love that.
So as we're building this out, I want to invite all of our listeners to share your own experiences. Share it on social media or leave us a review and drop it in the comments and let us know what you want to hear and what topics really resonate with you that we can talk about with your small ship cruising. You can visit us on all the major social platforms at Sometimes Sailing. You can also visit our main site, sometimesailing.com, and get ready for episode 2, 3 flavors of small ships. We dive even deeper into river, yacht, and the barge experience.
I am so looking forward to that. Thank you so much for listening. We are so grateful that you spent some time with us today, and we are looking forward to the future of Small Ship Cruise Talk.
Bye.